Hey everybody, James here from Dread City Games. Been a while since I've done some videos, and you know, busy. It's a lot running a company on your own. But there's a conversation on Facebook this morning that I think warrants a more nuanced response and a bit more perspective, because a lot of these conversations around Kickstarter and who should be on there and who shouldn't. I get the narratives that are there, but I think there's a big difference in the consumer perspective versus a creator perspective or a business perspective in general. So I just wanted to put this out there, and I like to give perspective. And then if whatever you want to do with that is up to you. But I hope that hearing and knowing more can help you have a more informed perspective. You know, that was always my hopes in a lot of these. So I'll throw up on the screen. I'm not going to put every comment that I'm going to talk about several comments. I'm going to scroll through and I'll respond to some of these. But this is what started the conversation. So from Tyler, and this is over on Board Game Geek, the group on Facebook. Can someone tell me why CMON is doing Kickstarters? They are one of the bigger publishers in board gaming right now. They're working with some of the biggest licenses in the world, and they even team up with distributors to put games to the mass market in Target, Walmart, and the like. Why are they still relying on the consumers to pay their manufacturing fees up front? They have the money. Millions they have gotten from Kickstarter over the years should be enough to sustain them. Kickstarter is not supposed to be a pre-order platform. It's in their terms and services. It's supposed to be a means to support projects you believe in that wouldn't get made otherwise. Now, I think one of the things I really want to hone in on is that last sentence of that. Now, obviously, we've seen hundreds of threads similar to this, and they pop up almost weekly, you know. But in this case, there's a lot of things I'll focus on. And like I said, I'll scroll through some of the higher top end comments. But one of the big ones is this last sentence is, it's supposed to be a means to support projects you believe in that wouldn't get made otherwise. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is that it is doing that, even for CMON. Now, I want to preface all of this with, anytime someone brings up CMON, I know that is, that whole conversation is colored in some of the choices that CMON has made in the past with their shipping, with their Kickstarter exclusives, and it has left a lot of bad vibes everywhere that even us other creators have to deal with that fallout. So I get it. I understand. So, but I wanted to say, even for a company like CMON, they wouldn't be able to make the games in the format that they make them without crowdfunding. Now, what do you mean, James? What does that mean? That means, so when we don't, as a publisher, if we don't have any idea of the amount of games that we should print, then we have to guess. And if we guess wrong, it could be very damaging financially. Now, so that kind of ties into the comment about paying their manufacturing fees up front. It's true. It takes risk and it moves it. It moves it to a more safe format. Now, what I mean by the games wouldn't look like what they do is that if we don't have that information up front, you kind of have to hedge your bets. So some of the components, a lot of the content, the way the games are made, the way, the extras that come along would not be feasible going straight to retail, because at the point that you go straight to retail and that you just pick a number, you essentially have to go, all right, well, let's hedge our bets. We got to make the safest product we can. So you typically leave out a lot of content, and you definitely have to be more hard-nosed on what components you're putting in, because you have to be more price conscious. Then also the price of the end product has to be very much different than what a crowdfunding project could afford. Retailers, they have certain breaks that they just don't want to go past. Now, so what I mean by that too is like, okay, let's say that you build out the game even for retail in the way that you think is the best, right? And you have removed some stuff and you think it needs to be $60 MSRP. Most retailers don't want, like, there is some like invisible imaginary threshold of $50, right? So you're like, well, do I take these certain things out of the game? But I've already kind of scaled it back. This is obviously just somebody who would normally go to crowdfunding is who I'm talking about, because the publishers that the Z-Man games, the people that don't really use Kickstarter, they've got a system, but their audience is used to their games and they know what to kind of expect. So if I wanted to take a game to retail, straight to retail, as someone who usually makes a deluxe game, there's going to be some hard choices that I have to make. And so that's one of the biggest things is if you like your games from the companies the way that you like them. You like my games with the deluxe bits and the trays and the stuff and the things and the whistles and the bells and all the extra, and not just components, but extra content. All the extra effort we put into world building and narrative. Like retail doesn't care about that stuff unless it's an RPG or a storytelling game. But like there's hours and hours of work in there that needs to be paid. And so anyway, it's a whole, right? It's not, don't focus on one thing. It's a whole. So if you like the format that a company makes a game in, it's a great reason why we go to crowdfunding, because then we're allowed to build the game in our vision with all the bells and whistles that we want, put the price on it that we need to put on it, and then see who's interested in that. And, you see the games behind me that we've made. There's been varying degrees of interest in each of those titles. And, when you're a creator, you just want to make the thing that you have envisioned as close as you can that's realistic. And so that's what's frustrating is when you see these conversations about, CMON shouldn't be on Kickstarter. I mean, obviously debates are debates, but, I think I don't see the purpose in those conversations, because CMON makes a very particular type of game for a very particular type of board game collector and player who wants those games. And if they were to shift their model to retail only, the product wouldn't look anything like what we're used to seeing from them. And then people be like, what the heck is this? Why does it look this way? What happened to the minis? What happened to the extra right? So to me, that's the biggest. That is the biggest. And again, I get it. There have been companies that abuse things with crowdfunding. I get it. But I don't know, these kind of threads, everybody feels so quick to be extremely cynical, very jaded, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and not really listen to any nuance to the conversation. And, I saw somebody like, just change their model. Like, they should be able to do it because they have enough funds. That's really, it's just, it wouldn't make sense. It's like, if Walmart closed all their stores and said, we're going to compete with Amazon and just go online only, all their customers would be like, well, we already have that in Amazon. We don't need you to do that. We want to be able to go to a place and see the stuff in person. It just doesn't make sense. And I get, there was a comparison of if Stonemaier can do it, CMON can do it. Sure, but Jamie also did that because of a lot of other reasons. I think he's talked about them, right? It wasn't just for this one reason that he can raise that money pre-order style, right? Like he shifted that system to something he already does. And I don't want to put words in Jamie's mouth. So I'm not going to comment on that too much, but it's not really apples to apples there. Let's see. I'll scroll through a few of these. Kickstarting is more of a marketing strategy than an actual means to get the funds you need at this point. There is some truth to that. There is some definite truth to Kickstarter being a marketing platform. It's extremely hard to build awareness for a game in the board gaming industry. There's thousands and thousands, almost like, I think, what was the last number I heard was like almost 6,000 games a year come out. Think about how many games a year you buy. You know, everybody's number is going to be different, but it's only a fraction of that number, right? So how do companies get your attention? How do they show you that the thing that they've worked on for years, because we work on these games for years before they come out. How do we get you to pay attention to that game and consider it for your collection? Marketing is a big part of that, and Kickstarter crowdfunding is an arm of that for sure, because then you get to come along and really learn about a project. You get to see all of its all of its parts, all of its pieces. You get a more intimate knowledge of that game than just seeing a game that's released to retail that maybe has a trailer, like a 30-second trailer. And so it is a big part of why crowdfunding and Kickstarter, I think Kickstarter in particular, because there's other platforms now, but I don't think they hold up to Kickstarter's bandwidth of people who've been there for so long. I know I'm one of them. I've backed over 1,000 games on Kickstarter, and when I see something pop up on one of the other ones, it feels like I have to go out of my way to go find those projects. Not to say that you shouldn't or that they're bad. I'm just saying it's a bit of the reality of where we're used to going to buying crowdfunding games. Then obviously I can hit you with a lot of cynical comments. Never use your own money when you can use someone else's. 40 likes. And I mean, I get it. There's truth to the statement. It's just colored in a way that's like, it's very cynical, right? And some of you watching this right now might say, "Hey, James, you're a year late on a project and you're holding my money." At the end of the day, that project would not exist if I didn't crowdfund it. So if you get the game and you end up loving it, was it worth the wait? Now that's a question you can only answer for yourself. I can't answer it. And I get it. Kickstarter games and projects are typically later than what people estimate. And I would just tell you to have some empathy, because it's harder to make than what people think. It's not easy. There is decision after decision after decision that impacts bottom lines, impacts, the livelihood of your future. There's tons of the product of everything. So, yeah. All right, let's go through a couple more. Jeremy Howard puts some pretty good stuff on there. I think his comments pretty solid. It's in defense of, he says, 1, publishers aren't as big as you think. That is very true. 2, to avoid huge financial risks. I already explained that earlier. 3, inventory. Picture the price of having 2 to 5 copies too many and being liquidated or just sitting in your warehouse. Inventory is a very, very difficult thing for us to manage in board gaming, because the majority of board game companies aren't big enough to own their own warehouse and stock their own stuff and employ people to work a warehouse. We work with third-party vendors. They charge us to store it. If that stuff's not moving, then we're just paying for it to sit there. Eventually, we have to liquidate it, like Jeremy said, or you have to do something with it. And it's a difficult thing to do. 4, if it's an IP, they need confidence in your ability to attract and deliver numbers. Crowdfunding versus retail only guarantees that. It's true. So, maybe I think that I really want to go make a Care Bears game, and I go convince the owner of Care Bears to let me make a game about that, and we put it on Kickstarter, and, only 500 people are really interested in that. Then you can gauge the hunger, the appetite for a project. As always, you validate the most content by funding it. This doesn't fit the retail model either, to sell just a promo. And that's right. Like there's other things that we add on in crowdfunding that just wouldn't have a life in retail. They're not interested in that product. They're not interested in that promo. They don't want that little box of extra content. They just want the main game. So there's a lot of things that you can't do through retail. Many good comments here. Let me add this very important one. This is from Stephen Bonacore, marketing. So we've talked about marketing. He goes into that pretty well. Somebody said, "Who cares?" Then, of course, there's multiple comments under there. I put a comment on there specifically talking about that the content in the box would not look the same. Someone said, "I stopped backing projects when retailers got theirs before me and had them at a lower cost on the shelves." that has happened because, again, it's very difficult to manage the logistics and the fulfillment timing across the globe. I'm not making excuses for anybody. I particularly, in my case, I go out of my way, or I tried to go out of my way in the past too, when we were more in retail, to make sure that there was no games in retail until everybody had fulfillment had at least started and games were on their way. But again, it goes back to a lot of the logistics of things, of like getting stuff in boats to your fulfillment partner. Then they ingest it, and they get it out, and it starts to trickle out and be fulfilled, right? That has to enter their queue. They have to go. There's a big process. As opposed to if you're sending something to your warehouse, who then makes very big one-time shipments to clear out the warehouse to get the games to distributors. And distributors then have the same problem. They have warehouse, capacity issues. And then they send out the pre-orders because that clears that space. You don't probably care about that, but it is the reality of trying to manage all of these relationships and dominoes of people who want things the way they want them. And at the end of the day, some people along those lines just don't care about your deadline that you set to say, please don't sell these before this date. It'll upset my backers. And they're like, well, I got it. I need space, so tough luck. In my case, there's a lot of reasons why, but like, I'm not going through the distribution model and retail model for the next several projects. And I don't know that I'll go back. I tried it for 7 years, and there's just too many hurdles for me to overcome. I've tried. And that was even when I was with Skybound, and I don't feel like we did it very well. We didn't overcome those hurdles. And I need to be able to control my destiny. I can't make something and then look at other people and go, I hope that I make enough money to keep doing this, guys, and I hope you help me out. And some of you are saying, well, you just got to make the best games. I mean, again, I got some games back here that are highly rated, well priced, and we just, for whatever reason, it just didn't work in retail. And so, that's why I'm going to the what they call D2C. It's just direct to customer. So I'm gonna just primarily use crowdfunding in my web store, and that's it. If you want to get my games, that's where you're gonna have to get them from. Unfortunately, that makes things difficult if you're outside the U.S. I understand that. I'm working on those things. I'm not just sitting on my hands and going, oh well, if you're outside the U.S., sorry. It does again, though, put a big emphasis on why crowdfunding is important for any company, because now when I do the fulfillment of a Kickstarter, I can offer it to as many countries as possible. There's still going to be some countries that the shipping costs are astronomical. I don't control those things, right? And obviously, backers and customers can always use a forwarding service. So I get all that, but I want, when I buy things, for it to be as easy as possible. So that's what we try to do. And that's another great reason why any company, big or small, it's anybody outside the U.S. knows how difficult it is to get games from U.S.-based companies that they're interested in. And so, Kickstarter affords us that moment to be efficient when we send out these containers full of games to different regions. We're going to 5 different regions with the latest Wonderlands War, and that allows us to ship it to places that normally would have to pay much more to get the game, right? They may still have to pay a pretty hefty fee, but they're probably used to that because that's where they live. So, there's one here. Kickstarter only cares about money, and I'm not even pessimistic. Their terms of service is an absolute joke, and reporting even overtly fake projects gives automated replies of not all good. Not much I can do with that comment. That's somebody who's just very negative about the whole platform, and that's they're entitled to their opinion, right? And I'm sure that was formed from some bad experiences. I'm not mad at them about their opinion. Makes me sad. I know how much enjoyment I've gotten from Kickstarter, and I know a lot of the games that I have here behind me that I play are funded through Kickstarter. So, it's a different experience for me. Obviously, I have more perspective by working on it from this side. Zero risks for them, lots of risks for the customer. Why would they change when it's working for them? And that, that's a very, it comes up over and over and over. So, sorry, I've got Facebook pulled up and people are messaging me, so you're going to hear that ding. Again, it's very cynical. Zero risk for them. That's not true. There's so much risk for us. So much. We spend thousands and thousands and thousands of hours to make a project, put it up there, right? And if it doesn't hit certain levels, we're just out. So for somebody to go zero risk, and I think CMON even has felt that. I mean, what did Mordred? It didn't do what you would assume a CMON campaign would normally do. So I just don't think that's completely true. I think that's just false. Well, I know it's false as far as risk goes. That's just, again, someone looking on from the outside looking in. Risk for me was we did Bloodstone and I took it down, right? Because it wasn't pleasing customers or the creator, right? Like we weren't level on either one of those. And they're not wrong that there's risk for the customer, right? But I know for me, again, I'm using anecdotal James perspective information. Sorry, I don't know how to mute this. Sorry. You get this. I've done thousands of, and I've only had maybe 3 or 4 that had serious issues, right? Like, okay, let's round it. Let's say 10. 10 out of 1,100. I ain't no math expert, but that's a low percentage, right? I've got the games of everything else. And, if they're late, they were late. I've got hundreds of games to play while I wait for the one that I'm really excited about. And don't get me wrong. I get the FOMO. I get the excitement from like when the new Castles of Burgundy, deluxe edition from Awakened Realms was en route. I mean, I was a fanboy, right? I love that game and that level of experience. I just couldn't wait to share it with my family. And as soon as it hit, we got it to the table. I probably played it 10 times in about a month. And I don't typically do that. That's not typically the way that we consume games. It's a lot of spread out things typically, or the bigger games. I can get small card games that play that much, but not bigger games. And it was awesome, So anyway, I could keep going through these, but I think you guys get the point. At least the point I'm trying to make is, is there FOMO strategy built in for some companies? Absolutely. Some will say now with my new approach, James, you're capitalizing on FOMO because now there's not going to be a retail, so I have to come to your Kickstarter and buy it. And that's somewhat true, but it's also not necessarily a strategy so much as it's just the reality of our everyday life, right? There are good deals that come up in other industries that on things that I'd like, but I don't have the money in the budget at that time to do it. And that's just life, that just happens. As a 41-year-old, I'm just used to that at this point. And in my case, I do plan to usually, I'm going to overprint and have things in my web store. Now, when the web store runs out of items, it's probably too much risk for me to do a whole nother print run just to restock my web store. It will probably be until we either do another crowdfunding project for that title that I get reprints, or, I'll have to do something else to be able to gauge how many people are actually interested, because there's minimums involved and they're in the thousands. And typically I would say a general number is about 5,000 is where you start to see a decent reduction in per unit manufacturing cost. Then you've got to consider the ocean freight and how many games fit into a container. If it's a big game, you might be only able to get like 1,500 games. So then you need 3 containers plus a 20-footer to get those 5,000 games to where, to your warehouse. And that's expensive. And that all adds to the number. So I just see these flippant comments and they bug me, man. They do. And I shouldn't take them personal. I know I shouldn't, but it's like, this is the world I live in, listening to negative comments and some positive ones. I appreciate the positive ones, but typically negativity in these comments, there's a grain of truth sprinkled with a whole lot of cynical seasoning, and then a lot of times a lot of hyperbole. Hyperbole. That's that redneck education coming out. Thank you, Alabama, 48th in education. And again, I can keep going through these, but I think you guys get the point. So overall, I just hope with these talks that, and I'm happy to take on comments in the comment section. I'm happy to answer more questions. I'm happy to hear dissenting. You heard what I had to say and you still think it's crap. I would ask, where is your data? And I'd ask, where is your perspective? If it's just from a consumer, then understand and self-reflect that it's just from the consumer standpoint, and that you don't have on this side of the equation any perspective, and just exercise a little empathy to see, like, man, is this James guy giving me anything worth considering? I've heard other creators say other things that are maybe worth. Just consider them and apply them. And you know what? At the end of the day, I just hope I can bring down that level of cynicism and jadedness just down a little, just down. It's disheartening to see 150 comments on a thread, and it's 95% people just. Blah, 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 blah. All right, that's it for today. I've got work to do to get your games for Wonderlands War and Title Blades 2. I'll be at BGGCon this week. So if you were there, come find me. I'm going to be bringing Bloodstone with me. I want to do some playtesting with that. And I just want to play some games. So please, if you see me at BGGCon, give me a high five. Maybe we can play a game together. All right. Talk to you soon.